Can you hear me clearly? Everybody can hear me? Okay. I think doing the media work, this is about media and connecting and communicating with the media. So we might touch a little bit on the specifics of the Palestine issue, and we can talk about the Palestine issue as we go on, but the focus is going to be on the media. So whatever the media issue that you're dealing with, this is how a person or a spokesperson or a spokeswoman or spokesman will address a specific topic. This is going, I'm just going to go run through the different aspects of being a spokesperson, and then we will have a question answer, and then we can even role play and just we'll do different things. To introduce myself, my name is Khalid Turani. I am of Palestinian origin, and I worked in Washington, D.C. As the executive director of an organization called American Muslims for Jerusalem, which was advocating on the Palestine issue to the U.S. Congress, to the White House, to the State Department, and holding meetings and lectures and campaigns and so on. I then went to Brussels in Belgium, and I did the same thing that I did in Washington, D.C., but did it this time with the European Parliament, where we were working with the members of the European Parliament, which is much, much easier than working with the U.S. Congress, because there are about 28 countries and 20 different parties that you can work with and you can coalesce with, and people who are really a bit more open-minded and not beholden to either one or another party. So it's here in the US, it's dumb or dumber. And in Europe, no, it is not. Here it is Republicans, Democrats, and in Europe it was much easier. So alhamdulillah, and it was a good experience as well. I also, being in Washington D.C. and being in Brussels, I was kind of thrown in the middle of media role, a spokesperson role. I had no training. I was clueless about how to do an interview. I remember the first time I went on Fox News. Now, this is Fox National, not the local news. And I made a fool out of myself. The guy would ask me the question, and I wouldn't answer it, and he kept hammering me on the same question. He said, "You're not answering my question," and I wasn't comfortable answering his question because it was a tough one, and I have basically to disown my own people answering that question. So I walked out of there just like feeling, so defeated. But the beauty about this, it is not complicated. It is, you kind of learn the very basics of it, and then you can be really good at it if you have that disposition, if you will. After that, I went on Fox and Friends. I've been on the Bill O'Reilly show, and I've been on Sean Hannity show, and I've been, of course, Al Jazeera and BBC and all of them. And it is, you kind of develop the skill and the kind of to be comfortable in front of the camera. The last thing and I'm drawing on my own experience, not because there's anything unique on it. Actually, there has been a lot of failures and a lot of really stumbling. But the most important thing is you get up, you kind of, you clean yourself up, and then you go and you do it again. Hopefully, having learned something or another. So why is the role of a spokesperson or a designated person to speak to the media, why is this important? Why would you think this is important? Anybody? Any idea why it is important to have a spokesperson?
To inform people about our problem.
Exactly, to inform people about our problem. So that, because if we don't inform people about our problem or about achievements or about good things or about whatever that is happening, somebody else is going to inform them about us. And we don't want that to happen. So one thing is to have our community communicate, our small community, as in the masjid or the Muslim community, communicate to our larger community where we stand. If there is an event that is an unfortunate event, if there is a tornado, then we want to say, hey, we are standing with the victims and we're collecting food or clothes, or we're opening our basement for people who have been displaced, for example. I mean, just to be connected and to communicate. It doesn't always have to be a lot of destruction and mayhem in Palestine for us to communicate to the media. And that is another really important thing, that we must develop a relationship with the media, not just, oh, I need you to cover my rally, so come to me and then I forget about you. No, to the contrary, we invite them to the iftar in Ramadan, and we invite them to the Eid, and we basically maybe give them gifts of ma'mool and whatever we bake. Just simple things, gestures of really building relationships, like in your business. Consider this, and I mean this very seriously. I mean, one of the things that I did, I was the CEO of Life for Relief and Development at one point, which is a big charity with 8 offices worldwide. And I would say even a charity that is giving humanitarian aid, or a masjid that is where people come to pray, think of it as a business. Would people want to do business with you? If you are a masjid and the media is the one that is presenting you in one capacity or another, would they consider you as somebody they'd want to do business with? If not, if we're being like rude to them, or we dismiss them, or we don't communicate with them properly, or we don't give them the respect that they deserve. At the end of the day, a guy or a girl who's a journalist, they're doing their job, and we have to give them that respect and that courtesy. So it is, support our standing in the community and build our reputation. This is very important. Now, when there is an issue, for example, like let's say when the club shooting in Florida happened, where a guy happened to be Muslim, went and killed 49 people in a gay bar. And the media wanted to come and communicate with you about that. Would you be ready? Would you be prepared? Well, I mean, the first thing a group in the masjid would come together and decide what is our message going to be. So the first thing, you'd want to unify your message. Make sure that the message is unified. We don't want somebody saying, oh, this is a good thing, somebody saying bad things. Well, yeah, they're gays, so get rid of them, good riddance. No, wait a minute, we can't say that. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't even believe that. But well, does that mean you support gay rights? Well, you have to put together your message, and you have to be really thoughtful about it. And you can't come 5 minutes before the media comes and what do you guys we should say? I think we should say this. No, I think we should say that. Well, I think if we should say we have no comment. Really? Good luck telling them you don't have a comment about 49 people being killed. So really, it is. That's how everybody does it. Corporations hire spokespeople, people who disseminate their message, and they pay literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for 1, 2, 3, 4 people, depending on the size of the company, whose sole job is to manage the reputation and the communication about our community, or about our corporation, to the outside world. So that is one thing. The other thing that I think is important is it's important to be relevant in this context. It is important important that even if the media doesn't contact us, that we contact the media. We communicate. There is an environmental spill. A tanker just spilled 10,000 gallons of oil in the lake. We should communicate. We should be relevant. We should be part of the community, and we should say our resources will be available, and we have 10 members of our mosque who happen to be environmental engineers who are ready and willing and capable of helping whatever the state wants. They will volunteer their time. What kind of message does that send about our community? That we're not just, the hijabis and the guys with the beard and the qamis and the pantalon and the people that they have beautiful building, but we don't know what goes on. I heard it with my own ears from somebody. I was speaking to a church, and they said, there's this, that was in Maryland. There's this mosque. It's a beautiful building, but we have no idea what goes on in there. I said, we can't tell you. We tell you, we have to kill you. What goes in there? People go and pray to Allah. So we have, maybe I can add to one thing that you said, communicate our problem, communicate our messages. Maybe to some, demystify who we are. We have to demystify what goes on in this building. A lot of good things happen in this building, so why not communicate it? So I think this is another thing. So we have to develop our message, unify our message, develop it, unify it, and deliver it. So we really have to hone on the message. We have to designate 1 or 2 or 3 people, maybe a man, a woman, 2 women, 2 men, whatever, however whatever the talent that you have. People who are well-spoken, people who are comfortable. Hopefully they have better accent than mine in English, who are articulate and well-spoken. The worst thing you can do is that you deliver a message and then your message doesn't get salam alaykum, and your message doesn't alaykum salam alaykum, and your message is not understood or is not clear. One thing that has to be, that person or persons who are communicating, who are designated as the spokespeople, have to be, one important thing about them is the message they can't be, well, go and talk to the media and then the board decides something else, or the board have a different message and they say, okay, you can go and talk to the media. You go talk to the media and say, no, you shouldn't have said that. And then they have a different message. They just threw you under the bus. That really can't happen. It has to be very well synchronized message. It doesn't have to be exactly the same message, but we have to agree this is what we stand for and this is what we stand against. It cannot be dual message. The other thing that is really, really important, that you've got to be viewed as trusted, reliable source of information. I can't come to you and then you say, no, this person who was just convicted of whatever charge is not really on our board of directors. And they go online and say, who are the board of directors? And, oh, that person is actually on your board of directors. Or you'd say, oh, that person who was convicted of fraud, for example, was never on our board of director. And they go and it's very easy. You go to the website, the state's website, you get the corporate articles of incorporation for the masjid, and you can find out who everybody who's on the board of directors served. There are ways that you can find out, and then you just told the media that the person never served on our board of directors, and they said, well, actually it was in 2012, he was actually the vice chairman of your board. And you say, oh, I don't know that. Okay, well, you just lost credibility and we're never going to believe you. And anything that comes out of you, we're just going to take it with a grain of salt. You have to be reliable, trusted source of information. Of course, you have to be informed. And to be informed, then that makes you trusted and reliable if you relay information honestly. You can be emotional, of course. You can't. You just have to be calm and collected. I wish we have the TV to show you some of the things. I wanted to show an example of Israelis who are interviewed, who are spokespeople, how they are, and how they really hit every point that they have to hit. I wanted to show you an interview that we did last week that was really, I think it was good, obviously, that it kind of went all over the media. One person, I just saw it today, that one person had put it on his reel. I have for Facebook, but I don't know how to put things in my reel. He put it in his reel, and he got 665,000 views on it, which was amazing. I thought it was pretty incredible. No wonder people in Michigan and Dearborn, everybody says hi to me. It was an interview that I did with a local TV channel, and it was, I mean, alhamdulillah, it is only with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm able to deliver my message properly, calmly, deliberately, and I think that is important. So it is to be viewed as trusted. You can't be emotional. A little bit of emotions, but not overly emotional, because otherwise you come off as angry. And the way we talk, you know how it is. Sometimes we talk with each other, and somebody who's white or non-Arab, non-Muslim, see us talking, and they say, "Why are you guys fighting?" I say, "We're not fighting. We're just talking, actually, because we talk with our hands, and we can raise our voice, and we kind of passionate about what we talk about." And the other person looks at us, and they learn the proper thing is that you keep your distance from people. When we talk to somebody, we come into their face, and they're like, and we're talking to them, and listen to me. And sometimes we hold them by the cheeks, and to a white person, this is like, this is foreign, if you will. So learning how to communicate with people who are not from our community, not from our culture collectively, because of course they are members of our community who happen to be white, who happen to be black, who happen to be Hispanic. So we don't want to generalize, but for the most part, the majority members of our community are, the elders are the voters, and the youngsters are the sons and the daughters of the voters, like myself. So to kind of communicate properly with the right tonality, with the right attitude, with the right disposition, I think this is going to be very important. Sometimes they'd want to ask you, and now we'll get into some examples. They will ask you about an issue, about what is going on in Gaza, and then you want to say, in 1948, the Israelis occupied the Palestinian land, and they kicked out 750,000 Palestinians who became refugees. And the guy is going like, oh my God, I'm confused. I'm wondering about now, what does 1948 has anything to do with it? We say, well, because what happened in 1948 was repeated in 1967, and say like, well, I don't understand what happened in 1948. Why are you telling me about 1967? Say, well, because they are criminals, and they came from all over the world, and they took our country. Like, so what kind of message did I get out of that? Nothing. I mean, you can't be all over the place. You have to be very, very specific, and you have to be very deliberate, really. So if somebody asks, what is going on? These horrible things that are happening, you can start with the big picture, but bring it down to the specifics. Say, well, the Palestinian people, for example. So, like, what do you think about what is going on in Gaza? Well, I mean, first of all, what is going on in Gaza is horrible. Well, let me put it differently. So, like a real question that somebody will ask you. Somebody will ask you, so what happened last 2 Saturdays ago on October 7th, and as a result now the Israelis are bombing Gaza. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, the first thing you'd want to say is, for example, you'd want to say, because you know where they're coming from, like, oh, the Hamas killed innocent civilians, and so do you condemn that? I mean, that question is going to come up. So when they start by asking you that question, first thing you want to say is that as Muslims, we don't condone the targeting of any civilians, period. So get that out of the way. Try to hide and try to hope that they're not going to ask that question, or try to kind of just avoid it. It's not going to work, because it's going to come up. So the first thing, you kind of beat them to the punch, and you just say, we don't condone the targeting of any, which is true. We really don't. And even if Hamas does it, it is wrong. We might support the Palestinians in their quest for freedom and liberation and so on, but if they do something wrong, and they're bound to do something wrong, we're not going to stand for that. Now, having said that, we don't stop here, because the story is not that, oh, okay, so if you tell me this, then we're happy, and if you tell me that Hamas did something wrong, then I'm satisfied. No, I am not satisfied. Because if all you want to talk about is the mistake or the acts of Hamas people, then you're not being an honest reporter. So when somebody asks me, say, first, we kind of cover our base that, we do not condone the targeting of any civilians. But to put it, and then we go on, and just now we put things in context. He's asking about the general question, and I answer generally, and then I put it in context. I say, well, to put things in context, things have been going bad for the Palestinians for the last 75 years. So it will be misguided to talk about what happened on October 7th out of the context of what's been happening for the last 75 years. And that makes sense. Any reasonable person can listen to this and say, yeah, that makes sense. Now, let me tell you what has been happening. It's important that you go from the big picture to the specific. It's important to have some facts and figures and statistical information that you can contribute to show that you are a credible person who knows what he or she is talking about. So when they would ask, I will say, and they will say, well, the Palestinians killed 200 or 1,000 people on Saturday. Thank you, Jazakallah khair, I need it. You have to have the information and be able to communicate this piece of information. For example, is that since 2008, 150,000 Palestinians have been either killed or injured by the Israelis. 33,000 of them are children. So when somebody throws that at you, say, to put it in context, really since 2008, 150,000 Palestinians have been killed. 33,000 of them are children. So we really need to kind of look at the whole picture properly, for the sake of time. So you have to be objective and forthcoming. I mean, if there's something is wrong, something is wrong. And you just have to say, yeah, we just disagree with that. And you really have to be transparent, and you have forthcoming. You have to just kind of present and bring up the issue that might even be difficult for you to bring up. So give big picture, then bring it down to the personal, local, the detailed. When I'm asked about what is happening in Gaza, I said it is really horrible. We have members of our mosque who have family in Gaza and they're really very concerned about them. Or, I mean, we have one lady whose brother was one of the EMS personnel, the first responders, who was bombed in his ambulance and he was killed. So when we talk about what is going on in Gaza and then we bring it to our local city, our local community, then they can relate to that, and then they can see that we are affected by it on a personal level. So you bring the big issue, bring it down to the specific, and then cite some personal, local, and some more details. Back up your statement with facts, statistics, figures, and testimonials. And so when they ask you about what is going on, and say, okay, the Shihab family. The Shihab family was a family that lost 44 members in the bombing of their house. So they drop a bomb on their house. This is not one of the residential buildings, didn't give any warnings, and they dropped a bomb on that house, the Shihab family. When you mention the Shihab family, I mean, you make it, this is a real family. This is like the Smith family, lost 44 members of their family, and that makes it more personal. The details, talking about the statistics, talking about the children, the relevance. You probably heard me today in the Khutbah al-Jum'ah when I said that at the time that 1,350 Palestinian children have been killed. That is 1 per 1,000. 1 out of every 1,000 child in Gaza have been killed. If we bring that to the United States, that means Israel was killing 9,000 American children every single day for the 10 days since the whole thing started. Imagine that. And I think to bring it to that level, I mean, I really did the pencil and paper and I put the numbers together. I can show you exactly how I did it. So to make it relevant for people here, so any piece of information, you have to make it relevant, you have to make it personal, you have to kind of provide the numbers, provide the statistics, and I think that makes a big difference. So you back up your data, your statements always, and never exaggerate, no need to exaggerate. You don't need to say, well, there were 3,000 kids who were killed when there are 2,000. Somebody says, you say 3,000, but all the news is saying 2,000. All of a sudden, the 2,000, as big as it is, becomes almost irrelevant because you kind of either lied or you were misinformed or you didn't have the accurate data. And all of a sudden, the story becomes you not having accurate information versus the much more important story that there were 2,000 kids who were murdered. Keep it simple. Don't make things complicated. Don't get too much into the history and into the just don't make things complicated. Keep it simple. Keeping it simple is always important. Always sound bites. Don't go into just, and I'm guilty of that. You know, I tend to be long-winded talking about something. Just try to say, you know, targeting of civilians is really horrible. Our community, our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza have been suffering tremendously because of that. Targeting civilians is really horrible. Yes, we agree with that. And our civilians have gotten had to bore the brunt of this kind of targeting of civilians. You just say one soundbite. Tell me one good reason that the carpet bombing of residential area in Gaza will make any Israeli safe. That's a soundbite. A soundbite. How fighting terrorism achieved its aim, if that was the aim, by killing 2,000 Palestinian children. Another thing, and I think it is a very important piece of information, is say Hamas was formed. What year was Hamas formed? Anybody knows? 87. 1987 Hamas was formed. So before 1987, what were the people of Gaza doing? They were living under Israeli occupation. So is Hamas really the problem, or is the occupation is the problem? So I mean, just like really bringing it simple to ourselves and to everybody around us, I think makes a big difference. Just kind of state the obvious. When they said, like the other day on Lester Holt, he was very excitedly just showing that there was bombing from Gaza on an Israeli city, and he interviewed a family. He said these were African Americans who've been living in Israel for years after they converted to Judaism. And I said, like, and nobody in America was like, what is wrong with this statement? Do you know what's wrong with this statement? I mean, he's just reporting the news, interviewing family that's been living in Israel for many, many years, after the whole family converted to Judaism. What is the problem with that statement? Come on, are you guys like, do you not know, or you just not?
After they converted to Judaism.
That's what you want to say? Exactly. Like if I convert to Islam, I can go to Saudi Arabia and become a Saudi citizen. That'd be good. Or I can go to, like, I become Shia and I go to Iran and I become an Iranian citizen. Or how about if I become Hindu and I go to India, I would become an Indian citizen. Where in the world does it happen that you convert to a religion and then you go and you get the citizenship of that religion when the person who was born in that country, who doesn't happen to be from that particular privileged religion, if they come to America and they want to get their PhD 7 years, according to the law, they're 7 years, you're absent from Jerusalem, you lose your residency rights in Jerusalem. Yani it is so simple, and to try to kind of twist that logic in any kind of way, it just doesn't make any sense. And particularly in America, and I think challenging the normative discourse that, they moved to Israel after they converted to Judaism. So just really good. That's the country I want to go to. And then you get free housing. America pays for so much of everything in there, and so free housing, and you get a piece of land that really belongs to some Palestinians. We're going to take it away from them, and then we give it to you, and so challenging these, what seems to be as if it is acceptable, it really is not. As if it is normal, and it is not. So just a lot of times keeping it simple and go back to the very basics, and challenging the narrative, I think is good. Now, when they ask, bridging the conversation, to your point, that really, to answer your question, that's called bridging. So they ask you about something, you answer it, and then you bridge to the topic that you want to talk about by saying, well, so I'll tell you what is the issue, what's the problem with asking the question, is Hamas a terrorist organization? It is like me asking John here in front of me. I say, so John, do you believe that a man should beat up his wife if she misbehaves? If I ask that to John, what am I implying? I'm implying that John is not at the same level that I am. That I have to question and say, so John, do you believe that women should be beaten up by their husbands, especially if they misbehave, for example? It's like, are you crazy? It's like asking somebody, so do you beat up your wife every week or only when she misbehaves? That's like, this is the wrong question to ask. And to ask us, do you condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization? It implies really you are morally superior, and you're asking me to match your moral superiority by proving to you that I do not condone terrorism. That is one. Two, you're assuming that what the Palestinians do in their struggle against the Israeli occupation is nothing but terrorism, and that is wrong. Now, targeting a civilian is wrong, and that should not be the case. If all you do is target civilians, you are a thug, you are a terrorist, you are as bad as they come. If you are in a struggle for your liberation, well, this is guaranteed by the international laws that you have the right to defend yourself and to fight your oppressors and your occupiers. This is according to international law. Now, when I designate somebody as terrorist, then do you consider Hamas to be a terrorist organization? I said, well, the U.S. government considered Hamas to be a terrorist organization. However, I believe this is the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is, what is going on there? Why are there people who are inflicting violence against one another? And then we say to you, well, because there has been an occupation that is ongoing for 75 years, and the Palestinians are struggling for their freedom. Now, does that imply sometimes there have been acts that are unacceptable? Yes. But now that you have asked me the question, I wanted to ask you, have you ever asked an Israeli to condemn the Israeli military as a terrorist entity? And say, no, well, that's a normal, a regular army. They are a uniformed army. I said, oh, okay, so you'd want to tell that mother who just lost 4 of her children that because the person who pressed the button to drop the 5,000-pound bomb on their house and kill them, because he's a uniformed officer, she really shouldn't feel bad. Maybe she should even be honored. It's a uniformed officer who killed your children. Like, are you out of your mind? Is this for real? I mean, are we really being asked that question? So really, to be specific about it, when somebody comes and asks, do you condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization? I would say this is a very good question. I'll be glad to answer you. Tell me, when was the last time you condemned the Israelis for the terrorism they're acting against or they are exercising against the Palestinians? Say, well, this is now about Hamas. Say, well, it really is. I mean, to think of it in a vacuum is misguided. To think to just, you want me to answer your question, but you're not comfortable with me rebuttaling. So do you consider Hamas to be a terrorist organization? This is a very good question. Tell me, when was the last time you asked an Israeli if they consider Israel to be a terrorist state? Because their terrorism against my people is 100 times bigger than what you would consider our terrorism against them. Well, it's not about numbers. You're right, it's not about numbers. It's about perspective. So I think, and by the way, this doesn't come naturally. You would have to really practice it with somebody to just say, okay, ask the question, answer it, and then the first time you're not going to get it right, the second time you might not get it right, because this is a skill. It is not that, it is a skill. Go ahead.
I think this is the question is very, very big question this time, because there is a lot of people who are working in certain places, they get the same question. And if we want to go for the details, most of the people we are talking to are not really familiar with the situation and the details back home there.
Okay.
I think that mainly we are looking for a short answer. If somebody, this is my opinion, if somebody asks me, is Hamas good and bad? I ask this question. I will tell him or tell her, I will answer your question if you tell me occupation is good or bad. If somebody occupied your country, is it good or bad? If you tell me the answer, then I can answer you. Because when you are under occupation, you are allowed to do anything. This doesn't mean I support Hamas or recognize Hamas, because in the United States, Hamas considered terrorist organization. But what the other option the people can do when they are living under occupation?
And to take it even a step further, yeah, this is absolutely right. Even
Short answer,
right.
not go into the details.
Well, and sometimes if you have to go into the details, we'll also go into the details. But even somebody to say occupation, people even don't understand what's an occupation. And say somebody comes to your house and says to you, well, there are plenty of houses in Indiana. This house happened to be given to me by God, a decree from God. So, I mean, literally. And I want you to get out. And they say, oh, really? So that's precisely what happened. That somebody came to our houses collectively and said, 3,000 years ago, I have a deed. Here's the book. See here it's written that God have given us the land, so I want you to get out. And I mean, 2/3 of the people of Gaza are transplanted. They are refugees from Palestine that was occupied in 1948. You know, I'll continue with this discourse, but like you probably heard me today in Khutbah al-Jum'ah, that they say that you have to provide, they're asking Egypt to provide safe passage for refugees to exit out of Gaza. So basically, I want to continue to bomb civilians, but I need you to provide them safe passage so we can ethnically cleanse them out of Gaza. And instead of you stopping the bombing, you're saying, I want to continue to bomb, but I want you to give them safe passage to Gaza. It's not that, well, you should stop bombing them. I mean, that's the easier, that's the more sensible approach, is stop the hell that you're doing. Stop the bombing, and then we wouldn't need to give them safe passage. Or, if you want to give them safe passage, 2/3 of them are refugees from the areas that were occupied in 1948, give them safe passage back into their towns and villages that they were forced out of. Wouldn't that make more sense? Instead of, well, I'm going to continue to bomb the heck out of you, and then I want Egypt to provide a safe passage so that you can get out, so that I can continue with my bombing, because I can't stop myself from continuing. It really is like war logic. But back to the question: is Hamas good or bad? I think a question like that can't be answered in one sentence. To say something about is a knife good or bad, it's what you do with it. If you're doing a surgery, it is good. If you're gonna threaten somebody with it, obviously it's not. So I think that is. I would answer that. This is really simplistic, and it cannot be answered. Are they good or are they bad? And then we can go into the discourse. Well, Hamas was started in 1987. Before that, since 1948, the Palestinians have been living under Israeli occupation. So Hamas came in trying to liberate the Palestinians out of their homes and to liberate their homeland and have people just become free from occupation. Alaykum salam. So I think to put it in perspective, while somebody would want it, and everybody wants an easy answer. So tell me, yes or no? Like our kids, they say, just yes or no. I don't need a lecture. Just tell me, can I or can I not? And say, well, I mean, you really can, but, and say, I want to hear the lecture again. So our kids, even when they want yes or no, most people want just, somebody calls you and they say, well, about this warranty on whatever on the car, say like, okay, how much is it going to cost me? I mean, don't like run through the BS. Just tell me what is it going to cost me. We want the bottom line. Everybody wants the bottom line. And I think, while you say this is a great question, and I'll be happy to answer it. So people are not like, oh, okay, she's going to run away from answering. And say, I'll be happy to answer it. Let me just put it in context for you. And then you can talk about the context. And part of answering that question really is being educated. And this is probably the first thing we should have said, is that you have to educate yourself about the issue. And there are 2 books I wanted to recommend to you. And I would suggest that we do like a book club type thing, where you buy 2 copies of the book, one for the women, one for the men. And then everybody reads the book, sign their name, and they pass it on to somebody else. You really have to know, we can't operate out of emotions. I know our hearts are aching for the people of Palestine, but we cannot operate out of emotions. We have to have facts to support our argument. Like the brother said, it is, go back to the occupation. I was on Fox News after I learned my lesson, that is. I was on Fox News. You hear now this guy is being interviewed so often. He was Israel's ambassador to Australia and to the UK, and now he is a senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister. His name is Mark Regev. Mark Regev was the spokesperson for the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and one time I was in an interview with him. They asked us to come on the morning show. So I'm going on the morning show. In the morning in Jerusalem, there was a bus bombing. So somebody bombed a bus in Jerusalem. A bunch of Israelis were killed. And I'm going to Fox News, for God's sake. And now I have to answer the question. I knew it. The minute I got there, and Mark Regev was in the studio, and he said, "Do you condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization?" I said, "This is a great question. If you condemn the Israeli terrorism against the Palestinians, both in English and in Hebrew," because now they always tell us, you have to do the condemnation both in English and in Arabic, because implying that we are dishonest people, that we say something in English and say something else in Arabic. That's the implication, by the way. So I said, this is a very good question. I would do that if you condemn Israeli terrorism against the Palestinians, both in English and in Hebrew. And then he said, "Well, there's no equivalence." I said, "You're right, there's no equivalence between a guy who's carrying a gun or who's strapping a bomb to his body, as wrong as that may be, to a person who's dropping a 5,000-pound bomb on a residential building." Because it was at that time that they killed Nizar Rayyan. They wanted to kill Nizar Rayyan. They used an F-16, dropped a 5,000-pound bomb on the building where he is. They killed him, they killed his wife, and 3 of his children, and probably 8 of his neighbors, and they said it was a good hit. Like, really? It's a good hit? Because we are so irrelevant. So he came back and he wanted to go back and forth. And I said, "Listen, if you want to take it out of context, you can take it out of context, but you know that the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian land is the genesis of all evil in the region." And he wanted to go back and he will tell me all kind of things, and I will answer them and answer and bridge, and say, and he said, "Well, you live in the United States, so why is it that you defend the blah, 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 whatever?" And I would say, "Yeah, I live in the United States, and I'm very fortunate and glad to be living here. However, my people, my cousins, my friends are living in Palestine under the occupation, and they don't have freedom. They don't have freedom of movement. They don't have freedom of expression. They don't have freedom to go and worship in al-Masjid al-Aqsa. So the occupation is the root of all evil, and we have to confront the occupation. If we don't confront the occupation, we'll be dealing with the symptoms. We would not be dealing with the disease." And then he kept, wallahi, I still have, actually, I had it somewhere on one of my accounts, the interview. It was fascinating that I kept repeating the occupation is the root of all evil. Whatever he comes back, I bridge it back to the occupation, that the host of Fox News ended the interview by saying, "Well, I guess the occupation is the root cause." And I said, "Hallelujah. This is great. This is where we want to be," that we repeated. Go ahead, Akhi.
So I wanted to ask a question about strategy when you're answering, because one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I think it's been used seldom but sometimes by people, is that the American conscience has very clearly, at least somewhat recognized the fact that land was criminally taken from the indigenous population of North America. And there's a little bit of white guilt that surrounds that in America. And so the question is, does it make sense to have some analogous statements to explain that, look, the situation we're repeating history again, and we're supporting the same thing that we know we already did criminally, and we're going to have the same dirty blood on our hands once we recognize it as a country, and we're going to be sad about the generations that we didn't recognize it, and we're continuing to do this again to another people. Is that something that?
Absolutely. I think this is always going to work because it kind of makes, we talked about that, the occupation. People don't understand what the occupation is. So you can talk about the taking of somebody's home and forcing them out, or talking about the natives, talking about that America wanted freedom from the colonialist British, and we did not accept, even though Americans had the same religion, the same language, the same background for the most part. Just because they would not let us be represented, and they want to tax us without taxation, without representation, we revolted against them. And
They were called, and that's the thing, is that, American revolutionaries were called
terrorists, absolutely.
Native Americans were called terrorists and savages and dehumanized and all. So I think I just don't know how effective it is, because I don't know.
No, I think it is effective. And however you frame it, if you frame it in an articulate way, and that takes some practice to just really, in so many businesses, especially people who are in sales, like you go to buy a car, and you'll find that this salesperson is so articulate and they're so good, and you come to them with a question and they always have the good answer and the right answer, and you object to something, they will rebuttal it with a very good, well-packaged answer. They actually hold sessions, hours upon hours, where they sit down and they practice with one another, and they know the set of questions, and they know the set of objections, and they know the set of rebuttals, and they always have somebody raise an objection, and the salesperson would rebuttal with an answer and say, no, you did good. This one, you were not sure of yourself. And so they coach each other on how this is done. We know that the Israelis do this all the time. They do it constantly, where they are training their spokespeople and people who support them to come out and speak on these issues, and they have scenarios, and they talk about, do you condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization? And say, like, what is your obsession with Hamas? Do you condemn the Israelis as terrorist entity? Israel is a terrorist state. And I said, no, there's no equivalency. He said, you're right, there's no equivalency. And then you come and talk about, it is not any less painful when the person who's killing us is pressing a button to release a 5,000-pound bomb. It is not any less terroristic just because you don't see it that way, and you see it just from 5,000 feet, and you see the bomb dropping, and you see the building collapsing, and then you don't see the human being that is who are affected, who are killed or are maimed because of it. So it is. I mean, it is all this and many other examples, and there are many online on how to rebuttal this, and I can share some with you that you guys can share with each other, where if you frame it right, it is always going to be effective. Let me go back to the books so that I don't forget. The two books that you would want it to read, it gives you just the very basic knowledge, because just being emotionally attached to the issue, and we're all biased towards our Palestinian brothers and sisters, is just not going to be enough. So the one thing so these two books will give you perspective, will give you historical data, will give you historical narrative, and they're done by an Israeli. Doesn't get any better than this. So an Israeli wrote a book that's called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. His name is Ilan Pappe, Ilan Pappe. And and an Israeli historian who graduated from Oxford. He had access to the Israeli archive. The entire Israeli archive was open for this person who's an Israeli. So they opened it for him. He's not in Palestine anymore. They kicked him out. He is in Britain. He teaches at the University of Exeter University in the UK. The book is an outstanding book. He cites statistics and names, villages and personalities, and he goes into so many details about the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. So this is one book. The other book is The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi, 1917 to 2017. I think this book is also very, very important because it is written also by a historian who happened to be Palestinian this time. So reading these books and getting the narrative, the historical narrative about what happened in Palestine and how our issue with the Jews who came to Palestine is not that they came to live in Palestine. This is the big lie that, oh, you guys hated the Jews or you've been fighting with them for 6,000 years. That is not the case. The fact is that they came with an aim to replace us, not to live side by side with us. In Palestine, we have Palestinians who are Armenians. We have, what's his name? He used to be the Palestine ambassador in the UK, Hassasinian, right? Have you heard the name? Hassasian. He's Armenian. His name is Armenian, but he's Palestinian. So we've had many Armenians, people from the Caucasus, the Shishan, Palestinians who are, what do they call Shishan in English?
Chechen.
No, not Chechens. اللي هن الشركس. Kassarian or Sakarian, something like that. Anyway, so these are people who came from different parts of Asia and became refugees in Palestine. If I show you a picture of my mother, you'll be stunned. My mother she looks like she's from Sweden. She has like the bluest blue eyes, and she has the fairest blonde hair. MashaAllah, Allah yarhamha, my mom passed away 11 years ago. And we know she's a refugee from somewhere. I did the DNA, and turned out she's from Georgia or somewhere. But she was born in Palestine. Her father was born in Palestine. So Palestine was a place where everybody can come in and they are welcomed. But the Jews who are Zionists who came to Palestine came to replace us, not to live side by side with us. They came for an ethnic cleansing plan that was very well documented by Ilan Pape in his book. Go ahead.
Just wanted to ask your thoughts on when you're engaging with the elected officials. Okay, so they're under whether they have sympathy for this for the Palestinian suffering or not. They're obviously under tremendous scrutiny on how they articulate their thoughts, and they're also they have to walk a very fine line, and their mind usually favors the Israeli narrative.
Right.
But we do know we have friends and partners who understand that what's going on. So how do you recommend you engage with them? How do you initiate that dialogue of saying, okay, we like, particularly with certain legislators who have put out statements that is very favorable to condemning everything we've just been talking about. So how do you engage with them to say, here's another perspective? Because the risk of attacking them, to say, what's wrong with you? You don't understand this. It's not going to get going.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
How do you walk that fine line?
You're right.
It's a journey of 1,000 miles.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is important, and you're right. You can't, you shouldn't attack them. Engaging with them in a civil kind of way, I think, is definitely what's going to win the day. Now, if there are friends who have done something like this congresswoman who usually is good in our issues, but when it comes to Palestine, I was in the studio and she was from Washington, D.C., and I had two pro-Israel guys with me. She doesn't know me, or she didn't recognize me or whatever, because I've met her several times. But she knows the other guys very well. I mean, the minute that the camera was on and she is on camera, she sees him and say, "Hi, Rocky. Hi, Aaron." And they say, "Hi." And they call her by her first name. Nice. I mean, I'll call her Congresswoman Debbie. And she say, "Hey, Debbie." So they're on first name basis. So all of a sudden, she didn't see that there were others representing the Palestinian point of view. She went and she said, "Oh, I'm so heartbroken by the terrorism and the raping of women and the beating of the children." And I called her on it. And I was firm, and I called her foolish. Yeah. But I said, I think it is foolish of you to repeat lies that have been retracted by the White House. But I didn't shout. I was really calm, and I was very, very, I was calm, but I was firm. I said, I think it is appalling, and I think it is foolish of you to repeat lies that have been retracted by the White House. And she started to want to walk back that comment. And then off the air, she apologized. And now that the video have gone viral, she is tweeting, she thinks she's Palestinian, tweeting, very concerned about. So I think if you call them to task, and you have facts to back up, because I said the White House backtracked on that story. What is your excuse to keep repeating the lie? And she couldn't. She couldn't say that, well, the White House was wrong. She couldn't say that. She said, well, I was in a classified briefing. I said, yeah, but you didn't see any beheaded babies, did you? And she couldn't say, yes, I did. And so she backtracked. So I think, first of all, the first thing is to be informed about the issue. Because they might be more informed than you are. And if they are more informed than you are and they challenge you on it, then you just lost credibility. So you have to be informed. And you have to kind of get like the entire story. And nowadays, information is available, and just making sure it's accurate information. So that is one. Two, is to confront them and say, and if they are not your representative, don't confront them. Have somebody who is their constituent confront them. Because when I go and I say, I live in West Bloomfield, you represent me, and I'm very disheartened by your position. And let me tell you why I'm disheartened. And I say the things. And then, and they would want to now give you a curveball, saying, well, but Hamas was it? I said, I'm concerned about the 2,000 Palestinian children who were killed. You're concerned about Hamas. I'm concerned about the civilians, and I'm concerned, go do your fight. I'm not going to stop you. But I am concerned about 2,000 Palestinian children. That is the rate of literally about like 14,000 American kids being murdered every single day for the last 13 days. And have them respond to that. But you have to have your numbers right, and you have to have your statistics right, you have to have your facts right, and just be firm about it. And the better, because this is an art. So, and better than just one person going, have 2-3 people go. And then you ask the question. And then they ask another question with different set of facts about why are they, like for example, saying, when you cut off water and electricity on any population, that is a war crime. That contravenes international law. And say, I'm concerned about the Israelis breaking international law by cutting off the water and the electricity on the residents of Gaza. So one person will talk about the children, another person will talk about the water and talking about a war crime. A third person will talk about carpet bombing entire neighborhoods and say that's a war crime. So she hears, or he hears, my representative happens to be a woman, the worst of the worst. Haley Stevens, I mean, she's in the deep pocket of AIPAC, and we have so many members of the Jewish community living in our city. It's like basically 300 yards from my house is the largest Jewish community center in North America. That's how good it is. In the 1.5 mile stretch where on the street that I live on, there are 6 synagogues. 6 synagogues and the largest Jewish community center in North America. So I can imagine the battle that we're having to fight with this congresswoman. But I think having 3 people just throwing things from different angles, I think even if he or she is not going to say, oh, I didn't know that, I agree with you, or because you're not probably donating as much as the other side, at least they know, oh, I'm being watched. The other important thing to do along with that is to make sure that you actually vote. And you can say, I voted for you, or I voted against your opponent, or say, I vote, I am a voter. So when you say, I am a voter, that means you vote. And you say, I'm very concerned with this. Why are you taking such a position that is contrary to what you believe? I know you're a good person. You believe in human rights. Why is the human rights of our babies are not of a concern? Let them defend themselves. Let them defend themselves in that. Being passionate, being strong, being firm, but being polite and respectful, I think, what is going to win the day, without a doubt. Go ahead. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Not a question, but just to confirm what you said. So many years ago, I got a book from basically the campaign toolkit which the Jews use to teach their kids on how to talk about the Israeli issue. On anywhere you go in the school, on social media, wherever you advocate for that.
Right.
They also have a website called Even in Israel. It's also a campaign toolkit to teach their kids, and I really hope that maybe in the States, in North America, we can have something like that.
Yeah, I think, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. We'll finish here. Just one thing real quickly. AMP, American Muslims for Palestine, is putting these kind of toolkits. They're holding these rallies and these advocacy days in Washington, D.C., and they'll teach you for 2 days how to advocate, and then they'll take you to Congress. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So there are a lot of tools. We try to kind of touch on certain things. This is really a 1-week course that can go to about 3 weeks, where you do the role playing. We put you in front of a camera, and then you go back and forth, responding and asking and answering questions in different ways. But I think the first thing and the most important thing is to be informed about the issue. And getting these books, I think, is a must. And if you have any non-Arab, non-Muslim friends who ask you questions, recommend the Ilan Pape book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, and just say, don't believe me, just hear it from an Israeli, and have him read an Israeli account of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Very powerful book, full of information, very credible, done by an academician. He is not a propagandist. Definitely he's not a Palestinian. So that makes a big difference. Jazakumullah khair.